everybody. Hello everybody, welcome back to my studio. Good morning. It's an absolutely glorious day. It's lovely to have you here again. I tell you, it's a very cold day today, bright and sunny, but absolutely chilly wotsits. And we've even had a little bit of snow, so all the trees and the bushes and the shrubs are looking absolutely gorgeous. And there's a willow tree in front of my lounge window. My lounge is kind of upstairs, which is a bit weird, but we live in a very strange house. And I was looking out at it this morning, and all the little raindrops, or the little snowdrops, snowdrops, not snowdrops, are they? Little beautiful glittering droplets of water as the frosty stuff was melting, the snowy stuff was melting. Absolutely beautiful. It really is a wonderland when it's like this. And it was such a surprise to wake up to it, because it didn't seem that cold yesterday. But hey, one never knows. You can tell there's a mountain opposite us, and you can always say, oh, there's snow on the tops. You can see the snow on the tops, and you know it's cold. You have to go out and break the ice on all the water outside for the animals and stuff. It makes it very basic, I think, when the winters are cold, and you have to do very fundamental things, don't you? Keeping warm and such like. So if you're somewhere warm where it's warming up and getting towards summer, lucky you. I've got some layers on today because I'm in my studio and it's always warm in here, which is lovely. But I just, I like to layer up so I can shed things, but I like to be warm when I'm sitting, especially if I'm sitting sewing. So hey, we're doing really well with this piece. I hope you're enjoying it. I've had some lovely comments about what it looks like and so on, and I love how everybody sees something different in it. Although I have to say, this time we're probably seeing a similar thing in it, in that it's very much tree bark, I think, or trees. So I'm very pleased with how it's going so far, and we'll have a little close-up look at it in a minute or two. Got some ideas which I'm going to share with you, and we'll see where it's going to take us. I have to say, I'm still surrounded by the clutter that I haven't quite got around to clearing. I don't think my big January springtime clear out has happened yet. Although the house is pretty good these days. It's mostly down here when I've been working and stuff kind of piles up, and I think, oh yes, I will sort that out, I will. But then the next thing comes along, doesn't it, that you just have to get making, and you just want to get on with it. And yeah, so we've been doing clearing out outside. We've had a big sort out in our tool shed, because my husband has like this big tool shed area. Got all sorts in there. I've got our big old freezer lives down there and stuff, and we've decided we're going to make a special area for doing potting up and planting seeds. Instead of having it hit and missy, a bit here and a bit there, he's moved all of his tools out into one big area, and we're going to make a new potting area, and we're going to keep everything. It's going to be so beautiful. I'm going to love it, and I'm going to get in there and get it cleaned up. I've got a lot of stuff that needs chucking out again, I think, but the big clear out that we did last year has really held good. It's been really brilliant. So yes, that's life, isn't it? Life is full of interesting things at the moment, and I just think being down here is so lovely with you guys. It's just so lovely to share what I'm doing here, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you, especially if you've just joined us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. It's very heartwarming to know that I'm sharing what I'm doing with people all parts of the world, really. It's just lovely. I just sit here and I chat to the camera, and I'm chatting to you. So how does it get any better than that? So we're going to go over to my embellishing area. Well, it's where my embellishing machine lives, and we're just going to see what's going to happen next. So here we are. It's very interesting looking at this piece. I think you get a different sense depending on which way up you have it. It's definitely got all sorts of possibilities, and I love what everybody sees in it, because it's more or less the same. We've kind of got a similar, snowy trees thing going on, and bark, I think, is another possibility. I'm not saying what it is or what it isn't. I just love that everybody can see what they want to see in it. I'm not saying anything hard and fast about it, but I do think for me it goes this way. And again, that could be tree trunks, it could be just bark, whatever. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It's what you see and what I see and what we appreciate in it. That's all that matters. So I'm thinking, though, what I've been mulling over is what it wants to be, this piece. I don't think it just wants to be something to hang on the wall. Somebody talked about 3D, and I think 3D, as I say, I think I did this last time, was definitely, it would be lovely as, you could do a series of these going up the wall, sort of long, thin, like tree trunks would be really beautiful. But what I'm feeling, I think, is, this is very radical, but I'm going to fold it in half, And look, it's a little book. And you could have it that way round, or you could have it that way round. And I just think that then, for me, sparks all sorts of little possibilities here. Obviously it makes it much smaller and would have to do something about the inside, so it's got lots of challenges. I'd have to find some way of dealing with the inside here, because I'm not sure you'd want that inside your book, but that's okay. I'm sure something can be put over that to tidy it up a bit, although it's quite exciting on the back. I mean, you could say, oh, I'm going to have it that way around. So I think this is the next challenge, is to work out what we're going to put inside it, and what are we going to make some pages from. And are we going to make full pages going all the way across that just fold in the middle, or are we going to make individual pages? I don't know at this stage, but I'm just opening up to the possibilities because I really like the idea of that. So I'm going to go in, have a little think, a little peruse of my fabric stash, and see what ideas come up for what we want to do on the inside. It's definitely got an earthy theme. It's a question of whether we do more textured things inside, or whether we do something more sort of illustrative, you know, actually drawing things. It could be full of mini landscapes, it could be full of words, it could be telling a story, I don't know, but I think it opens up lots of possibilities. Okay, so first of all, I've been playing around with what to put on the inside, and I happen to have these. I used to do a workshop called Stitch Story where we made books, so I've got all these little pieces of calico just waiting to go. So I was wondering whether I do it in a lightish colour. This was my first thinking, okay? I'm going to talk you through my thinking here, and then put in pages, sort of very textured pages. Here's some I made earlier, okay? And whether we just do it like a conventional book that opens up and then has pages like this, some kind of a story, some kind of a theme, lots of textures, lots of questions then about how we do the fronts and the backs, and whether you put two together like that, because, you know, that would be the story going on like that, okay? And then I was thinking, well, actually, do I want it in light colours? And I don't know that I do. I'm feeling though this is very strong and dark, so let's just put those away for a minute. I went and got a big box of fabrics out, another box of fabrics, and I found all these luscious, rich, dark, mysterious, earthy colours. See what else I've got. I don't know, all sorts of things in here. Little bits and bobs, and I'm sure I've got other ones as well that would fit in with this. And I was thinking, well, let's put those over to one side for a moment. I was going to get covered in clutter here, and I've got, oh look, so I happen to have a piece here. It's not quite big enough actually. No, let's not use that one. Let's just, so here's a bigger piece. And I was thinking, well, because I was considering whether I do it dark, you see, and I think, well, I actually love that. I think that makes it feel dark and earthy and mysterious. Let's just see if I can sort of fold it up to a sort of a page size, so that when you open it up, ooh, it's going to be rich and dark and mysterious on the inside. And then I was thinking, well, following on from that, do I want pages that open like that, or do I want something, I'm just going to show you this in calico because it's what I've got. So just imagine this is dark fabric and not light. Is, do we do something that opens out from inside the book? So it would be concertinaed up inside the book, sort of like this. Some of the folds go the wrong way, but never mind. You get the idea that you would open up the book. And you would pull this tab, and then this whole thing would unfold, and it would be able to stand. So I'll just see if I can pull you back a bit on that. It would be able to stand and support itself, but it would have this story going across it. rather than being fiddly individual pages. And I just think that is the way we're going to go. I feel as though that's the way to go. So you open up the book and it can stand, the book can actually stand like that and then have the story coming out, and you'll look at it from this side. I think that's a lot less fiddly. It's got a lot more more potential to make it something interesting. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So I need to find some more dark fabrics and start playing with that. Ooh, I'm excited now. I love it when it just suddenly goes, ooh, because as I say, when I was looking at the light colours, I was going, oh, that's very lovely, and I could do some very interesting things. But the minute you put the dark in and hide that light colour, it just becomes this completely different thing. So I'm excited about that, and now I'm going to find some fabrics and we can get cracking. So all I've done so far is cut myself a long piece of tearaway stabilizer, and I've kind of worked out, I've done a quick calculation of what sort of size the pages need to be, and then added them all up and allowed for some folding. So that's my piece of, that's just to get me started, okay. Let's move that out of the way. The other thing I've got out is, if you've watched my little video, I can't even remember when I did this. Did I do this in the autumn? That seems so long ago now. I got my sketchbook out because in here, for example, it's got a flappy outy bit, which is the idea of doing a long landscape and then having different things going on in the foreground possibly, and changing as it goes across, being quite loose and open as a landscape, but definitely like a long linear sort of thing possibly. And then, because I really like these, I like the idea of having, I don't know, the marks of trees or, you know, hedgerows and things, and then just sort of mountains, lines of mountains, maybe different textures going on. I don't think I want it as quite as illustrative as that, but you get this feeling of something going on, telling a story somehow. Again, perhaps different textures, not those sort of colours, but yeah. So this is where it's very useful to have a little sketchbook that you've done, something you've done earlier, that you can just go and go, ooh, well actually, even something as simple as that, it's got, to me, that's got different textures, different shapes, possibilities, all about possibilities. So I'm going to have a fiddle around with my fabrics next. Now I've cut my actual size, even though it's quite rough, I've allowed extra so that when it gets concertinaed and folded, there's, you know, the capacity to include that, plus a little bit. I haven't quite decided exactly how I'm going to fit it into the book, but I'm leaving enough that I could actually stitch it into the book and have a bit of leeway, etc. So I'm leaving plenty of space. Unlike my usual trick where I cut myself short, I've actually done plenty. So I'm going to just start playing around with some fabrics next and see what I can come up with as a sort of composition. Just get playing. So I've just been fiddling around with a few bits of fabric just to see where this might be going, and you know, whether I include really textured pieces like this, whether I use something like this, for example. This is quite fun. It's a little bit of shirred shirt. Try saying shirred shirt. Shirred up shirt. And I really like the way that that gives a texture down here and then a little bit of something going on up there. And I did a little bit of sort of quick sketching on some little bits of paper. I don't know if you're able to see that because the light's coming in the window. Just asking questions and saying keep it loose, keep it free. Like a random response to the landscape, so where I'll just do different shapes like I do in my sketchbook, or whether I do something that's got long linear feeling to it with different things going on in the foreground, sort of telling a story as it goes across. And then sort of technical questions about, you know, am I going to wad it? Am I going to use how many layers of stabilizer? Do I need to buy a little bit more fabric, even, dare I say it? And what sort of colours I might like to be using. So this is just helping me to process what I need to be doing here. Sometimes I play with the fabrics, but sometimes it's also quite useful just to scribble down a few things because it just gets it out of my head. And even if I'm just going to say no to it, that's okay. I'm trying and exploring something and being curious about what's possible. Alright, so this is me getting some pieces of fabric out, and I'm just trying to mock up what I think might go on here. I've just been fiddling about cutting little shapes and colours, different fabrics. If they're too shiny, I'm just turning them over and seeing if I prefer the other side. I've got this lovely greenish colour, and I've tried some of this in the mix, but I don't think that really works. I've also got some of my lovely shruggy material, which I shall show you better in a moment. But what I've also done is I've decided I'm going to put calico on top of my tearaway, because that'll give the whole thing a stiffness, a bit more stiffness, and I'm going to embellish it. I was originally thinking, well, do I just make it a very smooth, I'll just fill that back up again. You have to imagine this is what's going to be coming out of this, like this landscape coming out from this area, which I think is kind of, I do think these are trees. It's either bark, like sort of like that, or trees, I think. That sort of ilk anyway. So this is from the earth. It's what's coming up is this very earthy sort of thing here. So what I've done is it's all about choosing. I've had to fiddle about, and the more I've started, because to start with I was kind of thinking, I don't know what to do. Having chosen these browns, I'm thinking, oh, is that right? So what I've done is I have made myself a little sample here. Done a little bit, a tiny bit of stitching on it, and I've done some embellishing, and it's beginning to make some sense to me. It's beginning to make some sense. It's kind of, if I move this out of the way a little bit, you have to keep faffing until something begins to come through, because otherwise you're just not going to do anything otherwise. So I'm feeling that if this was kind of stood up and this was coming out of it, I think that would work for me. It's making it all very textured, and because this will be a lot of browns but concertinaed, I think it's going to work. I feel as though that's got potential. So I'm going to fiddle about some more, start cutting some fabrics and start laying some stuff out. I think this is not one I can do as I go along, in that I'm doing a long piece, so I have to have some idea of how it's going to sort of have the composition's going to go, what sense it's going to make, what story it's going to tell as it goes along. So I'm going to fiddle about some more. That's all I can do really, till it begins to gel and I go, ooh yes, that's making me feel excited. And of course the great thing is to be able to change your mind at any time. I don't have to do it embellished if I don't want to. I could just be laying it out and stitching it. I reserve the right to change my mind at any time, because that's what it's all about. Okay, so I'm just fiddling about here. I've got lots and lots of little scraps of fabric that I've sort of cut into landscapey shapes. Okay, they're sort of landscapey shapes, and what I'm trying to decide is what exactly I'm going to do with them all, and what's going to go where, and how it's going to layer up. I've obviously made my little sample, which is helpful, although sometimes when you've made a sample and you think it looks brilliant, what you make next never quite matches up to the brilliance of the first bit you did. But we'll give it a go, So I'm just going to fiddle around with these until I get them laid out how I want them. So I've been having another little ratchet in some of my fabrics and finding all sorts of interesting things. I've got this beautiful, it was a top, and it's got these gorgeous greens which could be useful. They've got some nice interesting patterns and shapes if I could perhaps embellish them in some fashion. It's also got a very nice green, nice dark green lining which might come into the mix. It's a question of how I could knock these patterns back a little bit. But I love the colour, I love the darkness of that. It kind of goes in with that. So that's a possibility, a possible contender. The other thing I pulled out was a bit of velvet, but I think that's just too thick. It's a nice colour, but it's too thick, and I don't think it kind of fits in with this. And I've got a couple of other browns. I'm very brown, feeling very brown. This is a lovely silk shirt that my sister-in-law gave me many years ago, and it's been well and truly cut up. It had a lovely embroidery on, but I've used it for many things, but it does shrink very much when you embellish it, as does this. But again, it's two other possible colours to put into the mix, and we can just see how it all comes together. So it's quite exciting. I love this bit. I love this playing around, and there's no right answers, there's no wrong answers. You know, you can't get anything wrong. You just play until it goes click and you go, oh yes, I like that. And it can be a little bit daunting because we've got this long piece to do, but I'm just going to play around with it, and once you start and the pieces start to come together and you begin to get a feeling for it, that's when the joy comes in. So I'm going to fiddle around with it as kind of off camera because I need to really think about it or feel about it, and work it out, and then I'll show you when I've got a bit further on. Ba ba da ba da ba da ba ba.